Very good noon. Immediately after lunch, we had a fiery session from Robert. We'll follow in one more. If you're feeling sleepy, please don't hesitate. Just don't snore so that the person next to you doesn't get irritated. I thought the joke worked slightly well. I thought it would work better. But I'm given the opportunity in today to introduce Abhay. I think a lot of us know him well, a 35 years veteran who now is the CTO at Nokia, leads the global sales for cloud and network services. Before that, we know that he was the CTO at Bharti Airtel. He spent a lot of time, he was actually an ITS officer of the 87 batch, started working with DOT in 1989. I don't think I can do justice to the introduction of his. Maybe I'll give a minute, introduce yourself if you want to add anything there.
Uh, no, that's good enough, I would say. So basically, I've spent a lot of my time on the operator side and feel very, very passionately about how the whole telecom industry has come up in India. I started off when it was in a nascent stage and seen its growth to one of the most powerful telecom industries in the world. So I'm very proud to be a part of it. And now in Nokia, I get to see rest of the telecom industries across the world. So I can really compare and say that this has been a phenomenal thing, what has happened in India over the past 20, 25 years.
Thanks, Abhay. So maybe, just for quick introduction, I have about 15 years of experience working primarily with telecom, a partner with the firm. But very recently, I read through a newspaper of Times of India which said that an operation in China was conducted using 5G technology where the person who was operated was in Morocco, about 12,000 kilometers. I thought at least some pieces and some use cases have trying to evolve because initially for the longest time it's been more than a year and $1 billion already spent on the on enabling a 5G ecosystem. And today we talk about how do we make sure that the monetization as it happens, the challenges that we'll see as experts in this space, and how do we move forward in capitalizing on those opportunities are some of the areas that we'll cover. But before that, Abhay, why don't you give in the space, considering there is a lot of talks on the use case. Is it anything new, or we are just getting more of 4G in calling it 5G and the higher speeds? Was it in it for us?
So 2 years back, almost at the end of 2023, Bell Labs did a comprehensive study on the impact or the revenue impact for the operators after launch of 5G. And guess what? Um, None of the operators across the world have been able to make a significant increase in their revenues after 5G launch, except for maybe two or three operators like T-Mobile, like Sunrise in Switzerland, like Optus in Australia. Other than that, the revenue growth has been marginal, 2% or 3% or in the likes of that, which was quite revealing. And the operators who were able to get that revenue increment sizable in double digits were the ones who deployed massive amount of fixed wireless access using 5G. So the only place where actually the operators made money was fixed wireless access. And to your point, Vibhav, that for a consumer, it really did not make much of a difference whether it is 4G or 5G. They were not prepared to pay incremental money for that additional speed or lower latency. And that was a big learning.
No, of course. So I think pretty much we all understand we've got more of 4G in the 5G space. But who has to look forward to monetize? So the telecom operators have, if I have read correctly, the global number is of the tune of 700 billion, which has got spent only to enable 5G. So what do the operators do? Pray to God, or there is a better option to look at?
So it's a very interesting scenario. And if you look at it in last maybe 18 months, you must have seen, or all of must have heard something called API economy. And that is the phenomena which everybody, so you must have heard there was an alliances of some operators along with Ericsson. The JV, it came up, they call it Aduna, which is basically talking about creating some kind of a platform for API monetization. You must have heard about Camara API standards, which came up by GSMA. You must have also heard of Open Gateway, which was talked about by Google. Now, suddenly, why these things are coming up in play is fundamentally because this is the way in which it is felt that the monetization of the 5G network can happen in a better perspective, in a better fashion. So these initiatives are going strong.
Okay, so if you were to choose top three industries or the use cases that you see that will happen in the near future, what would be those?
So there are, I mean, use cases will be country specific. And if I have to talk about, I mean, say something very simple like what is happening big in India. So if you look at the quick commerce industry in India, in last 2 years, the quick commerce industry has grown from zero practically to a 250 crore industry in India within no time. Now you imagine the quick commerce industry without without even most of us knowing here have already started using drones for delivering. Now, this is revolutionary from an Indian context, and it's not happening anywhere else in the world. It's happening here in Gurgaon. So imagine this kind of a quick commerce setup using a very sophisticated mechanism, drones flying in the air using a 5G network, being controlled, what we call it as BB loss, like, I mean, beyond line of sight controlling of the drones, and then drones getting the kind of bandwidth that they need for these kind of operations. So it's a very simple example that would happen in India and in very quick time is what I can see.
So then we will not see the motorcycles of Zomato guys zooming around and a little safer. That is what we can expect. What are the challenges that you see from an adoption standpoint, considering the ecosystem itself has to kind of spread, that I understand, because you see the use cases have to evolve substantially. What are the challenges in operations in terms of, first of all, the operator when they conceive this model, and however, how do they look at something like a cross-functional or cross leveraging use cases, because that's how I think you are indicating at the growth will happen.
So if you have to look at primarily the challenges, I will call three major challenges, and I personally still feel that I am belonging to the operator community, and that's where it pinches me big time when I see this happening. The first challenge that we, I mean, and this is across the world, that as operators, we always have been able to monetize something which we are good at is connectivity. And the first challenge is we have to get away from the connectivity, selling connectivity mindset to something bigger. That is the first thing. The second thing, which is very, very critical for this kind of a monetization ecosystem to be created. And when I say ecosystem to be created, it means there are multiple partners in this. You cannot do everything yourself. That would not happen. So you will need platform players, you would need network function provider players like Nokia, Ericsson, all of those people. You would need, when I say platform players, likes of Google, Amazon, so on and so forth, you would need application developers. So it's an ecosystem play which has to come. All of them have to come together. And the biggest challenge is to identify enterprise applications which will pay for this kind of use cases. So as I was talking about, Blinkit would be ready if somebody can deliver them a use case which is a drone which is delivering from a building top to the other building top from where they can run their distribution ecosystem. So identifying those applications would be another critical challenge that we have to solve for.
Of course, and I absolutely love the thought, if you look at two major factors that you highlighted, to look at a developing and an application model. And how different do you think is this application model as you move forward? Because telcos traditionally always have had a very heavy application-centric mentality. So when it moved to the era, do you think the continued success would be with the existing ecosystem, existing space and existing talent, or you would have to look at a more broader horizon, considering the 5G may have different business cases associated?
No, so this is where the beauty comes in. So if why network APIs have been there in network in 2G, in 3G, in 4G, always they have been there. Why they have not been able to monetize those APIs till date? The biggest reason has been to write an application which talks to the APIs and uses the APIs directly has been a nightmare. And so what is happening, so I'll talk about Nokia, what we have been able to do is, we have been able to create a very simple platform, which we call it as network monetization platform, which actually takes APIs, converts those APIs into very simple SDKs. Now they are exactly the same like what you have on your phones. The capability of your mobile phones are available in the form of SDKs. Now all the application, whether it is Android applications or iOS applications that you see on your mobile phones, they use these SDKs in order to exploit the capabilities that the phones have. This is exactly the scenario here now. Now with these platforms being available, this is exactly what is the effort when we talk about Open Gateway. This is the effort of Aduna, that's what they are trying to do. So once these platforms, and there will be multiple aggregator platforms, Nokia has one such, maybe rest of the people will have others. What will happen is every application developer who is capable of writing applications for Android or for iOS, they can write applications which will be capable of using network capabilities. And when I say that, I'll give you a small example. Say, going back to that kind of a thing, we have some 4 or 5 use cases on which people have written applications, and they were just amateur application writers. Remote driving car. So it was a very simple application written by somebody. There was another application which was using flying of drones and capturing the incidences happening on ground and sending them back at a very high bandwidth. So it basically needed a slice on 5G network, which was capable of giving them, say, 20 Mbps or 50 Mbps kind of an uplink. Very simple thing, capability of the network exploited by that application. So
100%. So, maybe I'll fasten it up a bit. If you look at the change in the operating models, how do telcos change their operating models going forward, considering you spent a substantial amount in the operator's landscape? Do you feel they should look at a brownfield, or they will have to look at it as a more greenfield kind of organization as they move forward when it comes to their operating model?
I feel in this case, this is a very good opportunity for all the operators and all the ecosystem players, if I have to call it, in order to share the resources and share the revenue. So this way, there will be two advantages. One, nobody will have to invest upfront money. And when nobody is investing upfront money, you can actually do much more with whatever limited capability. When I say this, let me explain it to you what I'm talking about. What we are talking about is, so this was demonstrated in MWC recently, in Google booth, in fact. So we had a Google Cloud GCP. In Google Cloud, we had put a SA core. On top of that, there was exposure function. On top of that, there was charging capabilities, orchestration capabilities, and we put this network monetization platform. So all the APIs coming from the network are coming onto that platform. And then on top of that platform is the application which is sitting in Google Marketplace. Now imagine this is a complete enterprise stack available in as a service model to be used by any one of them. They would only have to do is connect their APIs onto this platform and you are sorted. The moment enterprise uses that application, that money is shared between the platform provider, the network function provider, and the operator below. This will create value. This will create the kind of money that we want to generate out of these applications, because there will be no one single application which will give too much of money. There will be multiple applications and each one of them will bring in the revenue that will take this to a different level.
Absolutely brilliant thoughts, Abhay. I think I absolutely agree with the thought that the operator will play a more critical role at the back end of the ecosystem, and that many times when the use case gets established, to actually be able to build all these ecosystems together and slice and dice the ecosystem as it move forward. So very, very quickly, I can see we just about 30 seconds left. So your quick recap on the Firesides top 3 challenges.
Biggest challenge is to change the mindset on, on moving on two counts. One, moving from an ownership level to a sharing level. And second, the mindset of being able to gun for value creation rather than selling here and now connectivity thing.
Right. So more of the same problem, but again, we can see that it's not a solution that there the solution has been created, problem is getting generated. We still have the solution. Okay, top 3 cultural changes that the organizations should do to adopt it better.
So adopting as a service model itself is a cultural change fundamentally because operators typically, and I have seen this happening across board, we are very much fascinated by EBITDA. And when we talk about EBITDA, paying something for as a service model erodes EBITDA. And that is one cultural shift that is absolutely critical to happen in the minds when we start this kind of a thing.
I agree. In fact, as you mentioned on the initial use case of getting a drone delivery, I'm super excited about this. In fact, I'll just give you a quick example. I was very recently in my village, somewhere in the remote location in MP, and when Robert was mentioning about a smart village, it is one of those smart villages. That smart village, in terms of the monitoring, in terms of the people, in terms of kids, the school capabilities, subsequent to that, the ability to actually monitor all the sensors. My father was sitting at home and he sent a message and the irrigation system started, vis-a-vis it got stopped. I think some of those use cases are really evolving as it moves forward. So that's how I am seeing as a lot of use cases that are evolving. Do you have an example on the IoT ecosystem that will move? Because I think that's where the world has been talking about a long time. I see some of these organizations adopting IoT as well. Any use cases or option that you feel that would happen in the industrial market, because that's fundamentally a primary source, because I see we have got some additional time.
Yeah, so I mean, all of these enterprise use cases that we are talking about will be triggered through IoT devices. Very simple example. Let's take a surveillance use case, okay? Now there is a warehouse in which you have some CCTV cameras through which the normal surveillance mode is maintained. And it finds an anomaly, it finds there is a intrusion or some sort, and they want to do a comprehensive surveillance of what has gone wrong. So that IoT device can trigger an application which will trigger the flying of a drone which is at a clustered place, which can actually do a deep dive surveillance of that area and then send it back to a centralized ecosystem where they can monitor whether it needs whether that intrusion requires a police intervention, that intrusion requires, okay, it's an animal, we can live with it, it's fine with it. So it will all be triggered by IoT devices.
Right. In fact, one of the use cases, just to add to what Abhay said, was I was recently working with one of our clients who does the pizza delivery. I'm sure you would have got the ability of the pizza delivery team to not only track each and every pizza getting delivered through an IoT device, but every component from across the country, where are 700 plus outlets that are managed, to be actually delivered and have a real-time information of not only where the product is going from an inventory standpoint, but subsequently also knowing the health of each of these ingredients that are getting through. That's a unique ability that was created through a 5G ecosystem, while they have created or launched it in 5 major cities and they are rolling it out across. But some of these use cases really enhance or, stamp on some of the areas that you mentioned, Abhay. Abhay, I think on a closing remark, if I were to give you a minute and ask you, what are your closing remarks on when do we monetize and when do we start prepping for 6G?
So, the way I see it, there are some beautiful use cases which the monetization has already started in some cases. I'll give you one example which will give you an idea. Port of Antwerp is one of the busiest ports in the world in Belgium. And there are so many ships lined up and they need to come onto the docking station before things can happen. Now, and it's a very narrow port. So what happened is they used to send specialized sailors in order to get the ship onto that port. Now, suddenly with this kind of an ecosystem available, there is somebody remotely guiding the ship as to how do you dock in that particular location, saves a huge amount of time, huge amount of money, huge amount of sailors going in there and then bringing in ship to the dock. These kind of applications have already started happening. And these are good. You can imagine the amount of money and time saved, and therefore the amount of money that enterprise is ready to pay for these applications to come in. So I think monetization has already started. It's a matter of mass adoption of those, and it will happen. It will happen very, very quickly. 6G, I think we are not yet ready as operators in order to adopt 6G right up. It will take a bit of time, fundamentally because the 5G adoption, 5G monetization has not picked up at the speed that it was supposed to, and therefore things will be slightly delayed from 6G standpoint.
So, again, I am always, I always thought India is one country where it has operated with 2G, then 3G, 4G, and now we're talking 5G, and we're actually implemented 5G. And at some cases, all the four generations are working together. Now, the complexity associated is massive. So, if your recommendation comes in, and how do we look at these four generations together for multiple opcos that should they sunset some of these technologies on 2G, 3G, considering the penetration is massive? What would be your strategy to enhance enablement of 5G?
So sunset of technology is inevitable. You just can't do anything about it. So let's take it from an application standpoint. How do we look like? So there will be fundamentally two kinds of, if I have to use the word phones, which may be a very narrow segment. So there will be feature phones and there will be smartphones. Now you have to enable feature phone voice communication, and you have to enable all the capabilities that smartphone delivers. If you are able to do both these things together, you, with the technology that is available, you can shut down rest of the technologies. So 3G becomes, to my mind, the easiest one to be shut down first, because 2G and 4G and 5G, between them, they can take care of these two things right now. Gradually, the feature phones will start having IMS capabilities in themselves, and then the 2G network can also be shut down easily. But that's the path most of the operators are taking. The first thing that they are shutting down is 3G, and then, of course, next will be 2G.
In fact, I'm reminded of one of these, when you look at these sunset technologies, one of these very famous mythological, elements. If you look at, in Hindu mythology, there are three broader gods that we look at, which we look at: Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. So in that intent, if you look at Brahma is the creator and creates. So 5G probably, if I were to say, were a conceptualization that Lord Brahma did. Then the operations. So all of us pretty much are descendants from Vishnu Bhagwan, where we are actually given a chance to operate this technology. But one person or one god that we don't often get into picture is Lord Shiva, because that's the one who actually have to destroy, and hence that becomes very pertinently important, because a lot of those segments in terms of tech, in terms of data, we have not been destroying often. So Lord Shiva is one that we probably need to have more often in our environment as well. With that, that brings me to the end of the conversation. Thanks, Abhay, for so much of help. We actually got 5-7 minutes extra, so I had to improvise some of these questions. My apologies, but it was absolute pleasure hearing you, Abhay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vibhav. Thanks a lot.